The moment the name Tom Bower collided with Meghan Markle, the entire Sussex story exploded into a storm nobody saw coming. Because this wasn't just another gossip headline drifting through the internet. This was a slow burn investigation suddenly detonating in public. And when Bower opened his mouth, the claims he unleashed didn't just question Meghan's past, they threatened to rip apart the entire narrative she had spent years carefully building. And the first bombshell landed instantly.
Having been a, quote, yacht girl, there have been more revelations.
He was shown the file, the thick file they had on Meghan Markle. The palace knew. The royal...
Meghan Markle is moving forward on the lawsuit against Prince William and him taking her title.
According to Bower, what the world thought it knew about Meghan Markle might only be half the story, and the details he's putting forward are the kind that don't disappear after a single news cycle. Yacht gatherings with billionaires, elite power circles hidden behind closed doors, and a level of preparation for royal life that completely shatters that famous "I never even Googled him" line she once told the world. But before anyone dismisses this as just another scandal swirling around the Sussex name, here's the part that has critics leaning forward instead of rolling their eyes. Tom Bower doesn't play the tabloid game. For decades, he has built a reputation as the man powerful people fear the most. Not because he shouts the loudest, not because he chases viral headlines, but because he does something much more dangerous. He waits, he listens, he collects sources, he studies timelines, and only when everything lines up does he release what he's found. That methodical approach is exactly why this story feels different. Because once Bower begins building a case, it usually doesn't collapse under scrutiny. It expands. And right now, his focus is locked squarely on Meghan Markle.
You think the Sussex overdrive is unbelievable. But, I mean, I don't think that he is going to get...
The opening jab was shocking enough to grab headlines immediately. Bower bluntly referred to Meghan as a 54-year-old granny, a remark that instantly ignited outrage, memes, and furious debate across social media. But oddly enough, that insult was only the warm-up. The real shock came from what followed, because according to Bower, Meghan's rise into royal circles may not have been the spontaneous fairy tale romance the public was told. Instead, he suggests something much colder, something strategic, and that idea hits at the heart of the image Meghan has spent years defending. For a long time, critics struggled to land any lasting blow against her public narrative. Whenever a controversy appeared, something else seemed to replace it almost immediately. A new interview would shift attention. A charity campaign would redirect headlines. Supporters would push back online until the criticism faded into the background. It was a system that worked remarkably well. But then Tom Bower entered the conversation.
And Meghan Markle. He's now considering all options, including...
Unlike journalists inside the celebrity media ecosystem, Bower doesn't depend on access to Meghan's circle. He doesn't need invitations to events or exclusive interviews with insiders trying to protect their image. He operates outside that entire system, which means none of the usual strategies work on him. Charm doesn't slow him down, pressure doesn't scare him, and silence doesn't stop him either. That's why this story is becoming such a nightmare for Meghan's team, because Bower isn't offering vague rumors or anonymous whispers that can be brushed off as gossip. He's presenting timelines, witnesses, and carefully arranged pieces of a much larger puzzle.
Accused of carefully crafting her public image, but recent revelations have ignited fierce debates about who she really is behind the scenes.
And the first piece of that puzzle revolves around something few people expected to hear connected to Meghan Markle at all: yacht gatherings. But not the kind most people imagine. According to Bower, these were highly exclusive events attended by some of the wealthiest individuals in the world: billionaires, corporate titans, powerful executives, the kind of people who rarely appear in public but quietly shape industries behind closed doors. And Bower claims Meghan was there, not as a casual guest, but as someone deliberately moving through those circles. Now, ambition alone isn't controversial. Hollywood runs on ambition. Networking is practically a survival skill in that world. But Bower's claim suggests something much more calculated. He argues that Meghan was positioning herself strategically, entering spaces where influence and wealth collided, building connections with individuals who could open doors far beyond the entertainment industry. And here's where the story becomes even more complicated, because another name begins appearing in this investigation. Author Kirby Summers has reportedly been exploring similar claims for years, independently mapping connections between Meghan and elite social circles long before the royal wedding ever happened. According to Summers' timeline, Meghan's social movement through these high-end environments wasn't random. It followed a pattern. Connections formed, opportunities expanded, and the circles she entered became increasingly powerful. Suddenly, the narrative that once looked like a fairy tale started to feel different. Then, the internet did what the internet always does when a story like this breaks. It turned into a global investigation. Old photographs resurfaced within hours. Images of Meghan attending glamorous events, appearing on yachts, standing beside wealthy socialites began circulating across social media. Individually, those photos had once looked completely harmless, but now people were studying them frame by frame. Dates were compared, guest lists were analyzed, locations were cross-referenced, comment sections exploded, memes spread across platforms faster than anyone could control. And once the internet decides a story deserves attention, it rarely lets go. That's exactly what happened here, because the controversy wasn't just about yachts, it was about identity. For years, Meghan had presented herself as something very specific to the public, a woman guided by principle rather than privilege, an actress who stepped into royal life reluctantly and eventually walked away because she refused to compromise her values. It was a powerful narrative. Many people admired it, but the yacht allegations created a stark contradiction. If Bauer's version of events holds even partial truth, critics argue the image of Meghan as a reluctant outsider might be incomplete. Instead of someone accidentally entering elite power structures, they see someone who had been navigating those spaces for years. And that contrast is exactly what makes this story so explosive, because when the public begins questioning authenticity, everything connected to that person suddenly looks different. Speeches are re-examined, interviews are replayed, charity work is scrutinized, motives become the new conversation. And that's exactly where the story started heading next, because according to Bauer, the most controversial claim hadn't even surfaced yet. The yacht parties were only one part of the picture. The next revelation struck even closer to home, and it involved the man Meghan eventually married, Prince Harry. Bauer claims that before Harry ever entered Meghan's life, her attention may have been focused somewhere else entirely, on the future king, Prince William. And if that claim is even remotely accurate, the implications are explosive, because it suggests the love story that captivated the world might not have started the way people believed. It suggests that Harry might not have been the original target. Instead, according to Bauer's theory, he may have been the alternative. That revelation hit the internet like gasoline on a fire. Within hours, social media was flooded with brutal jokes and memes referencing Harry's own memoir Spare, the book where he famously described himself as the royal family's spare. Suddenly, that word was being applied to his marriage as well. And for someone who spent his entire life feeling overshadowed by his older brother, that idea landed like a punch to the gut. Because if Bauer's narrative is correct, then Harry may have unknowingly stepped into a role he had always feared. Second choice. Second place. Second again. And the internet, as ruthless as ever, didn't hesitate to run with it. But just when the story seemed controversial enough already, Bauer dropped another claim that changed the entire context of Meghan's relationship with Harry. He says the famous line from Meghan during the Oprah with Meghan and Harry interview, the moment she insisted she had never even Googled Harry before meeting him, might not be true. According to Bauer's investigation, Meghan didn't walk into that relationship blindly. He claims she studied Harry intensely, his emotional struggles, his grief over Princess Diana, his charitable work in Africa, his frustration with living in William's shadow. In other words, Bauer argues Meghan understood Harry's emotional landscape before their first date ever happened. If that claim is accurate, it completely reframes the narrative of their romance, because instead of an unexpected love story unfolding naturally, critics would see something far more strategic: preparation, calculation, positioning. And that possibility is exactly why this story refuses to die down, because every new detail Bauer reveals seems to connect to a much larger picture. A picture that suggests Meghan's rise through Hollywood, social circles, and eventually the British royal family may not have been accidental at all. Instead, according to his theory, it might have been the result of years of careful planning. And if that's true, then the biggest revelations may still be coming. If the first wave of claims shook the internet, the next phase of the story is where things started getting genuinely uncomfortable for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Because according to Tom Bauer, the yacht allegations and royal targeting theory were only the opening chapters of something much larger. What followed was a chain reaction that reached far beyond gossip pages. It reached straight into Hollywood. For a brief moment after stepping away from royal duties, the Sussex brand looked unstoppable. Streaming platforms were circling. Production deals were announced. Media executives were eager to attach themselves to the story of a royal couple rewriting the rules of modern celebrity. Hollywood loves a powerful narrative, and their narrative was irresistible. A prince who walked away from the crown, an American actress who challenged centuries of tradition. Together, they looked like the perfect hybrid of royalty and entertainment power. Doors opened quickly. Meetings filled calendars. Projects were discussed in rooms where billion-dollar decisions are made. But then something subtle began to shift. Not loudly, not publicly, quietly, behind closed doors. Because the entertainment industry has a strange way of reacting to controversy. It rarely announces rejection directly. Instead, things simply slow down. Calls start getting routed through assistants instead of executives. Meetings get postponed. Development conversations lose urgency. And according to Bauer's account, that's exactly what began happening as the yacht allegations started spreading. No official statements, no dramatic cancellations, just silence. And in Hollywood, silence is often the loudest signal of all, because the industry can tolerate almost anything. Ego, drama, even scandal, as long as someone remains profitable. What it struggles with is uncertainty. The moment someone begins looking like a reputational risk rather than an asset, the entire equation changes. And the yacht narrative created a version of Meghan that some executives reportedly found uncomfortable. Not because ambition is unusual in Hollywood. Ambition is the oxygen of that world. But because the contrast between Meghan's humanitarian image and the version suggested by Bauer's investigation created confusion. Was she a principled activist or a strategic climber? That question alone was enough to make decision makers cautious. Suddenly, the Sussex brand wasn't just exciting. It was complicated, and complicated brands make investors nervous. But the Hollywood reaction wasn't the only thing intensifying the situation, because while executives were quietly recalculating their involvement, the internet had already moved to a completely different stage. It began rewriting the entire Sussex narrative. Old interviews resurfaced, speech clips were replayed, moments that once seemed heartfelt were suddenly being examined frame by frame. Body language experts started appearing in commentary videos analyzing facial expressions from years-old appearances. Online investigators dissected everything, every pause, every smile, every phrase. The question echoing across platforms was always the same. Was it genuine or was it performance? And once that question enters public conversation, it spreads like wildfire, because authenticity is the currency of modern celebrity. Lose that and everything else begins to wobble. Then the conversation circled back to the most famous moment of all, the interview that once defined the Sussex narrative, the sit-down with Oprah Winfrey. In that interview, Meghan famously described entering royal life with almost no prior knowledge. She presented herself as someone who had barely researched the royal family before meeting Harry. But Bauer's version of events paints a completely different picture. According to him, Meghan approached Harry's world the way an actor studies a complex role, meticulously. He claims she examined the emotional forces shaping Harry's life long before their first meeting. His grief over Princess Diana, his charitable work in Africa, his long struggle with living in the shadow of Prince William. Those details weren't random facts, they were emotional pressure points. If Bauer's sources are accurate, Meghan understood those vulnerabilities before their relationship even began, and that possibility reframes the entire romance. He doesn't rely on access. Until one day the version of the story people believed no longer feels real. Right now, the transformation is happening in real time. And if Tom Bauer truly has more revelations waiting, the storm surrounding Meghan Markle and Prince Harry may only be getting started.